Hi, Jen.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I always say, how are you? As if like as if you just walked in. We've been together for hours. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, consistency. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And we will be here for a long time too. Like we're gonna keep being consistent, is what I mean. I promise for our very loyal listeners. We will not disappear for a year again. I'm very excited about this episode today.
Me too.
This is like pun intended, so on brand for us. It is, I don't know, I've been very into this teasing, and I know you just get anxious and you're just like, just tell them what it is. But the title of this episode is What Do People Say When You're Not in the Room? Let's chat about personal branding. And we have a lot of like personal stories today, and like a lot of this has been like an evolving conversation basically over this summer coming out of the pandemic, about like how can we help people, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's the reason we launched the collective in the first place, to make it more accessible. And from what we've learned with like our current members is there were a lot of people that were like looking to transition. We were kind of originally building it, and that's why I love things like that evolve. But we were originally building it for like established businesses, or people looking to launch businesses. And what we're learning is like there are a lot of people that are like kind of like dipping their toes in and
Mhm.
starting to consider things, but still like are looking to get started, but aren't looking to like jump into starting a business like immediately, right? And I think that when we like kind of backtracked on our own lives and like, okay, where were we when we were at that point? Like a big thing that we realized, that we did, and something that helped us, and something that was a huge part of that transition, was like creating a personal brand. And we started to like really flush it out and talk it through, and like we're like, "Oh, yeah, like, we know how to do this, and also we understand the value in it."
Mhm.
And we can also, like, use ourselves as case studies, and as we continue to evolve, like, pull from our own experience and our knowledge in building other brands, and how this can be useful. And as we talked about it, we had, like, a million aha moments, but I think that one of the things that we also realized was, like, how much some people like don't realize how much a personal brand is affecting them right now, or could help them. And so I guess like we'll start off with a question: who needs a personal brand?
Everyone.
Everyone. You need one. You listening, you need one. Yeah, and I think that like one of the first things I said when we were talking was like one of the things that well, actually I was just thinking about this. This is going to be funny. Jen loves to tell people that, like, no one's special. That's, like, one of Jen this is part of Jen's personal brand, is telling people that they're not special in the nicest way. And let me, like, break that down so
You
Jen
always
doesn't
make me
sound like a
sound
monster.
yeah, you always make me sound really fun.
But I think that the idea is, like, we're not special, right, Jen? Like
No.
like, in the sense that, like, what we do is not particularly special. There are a lot of very, very, very talented marketers, digital marketers, brand builders out there, and, like, it would be obnoxious and completely invalid to even say that like we're the best. I think we're really, really fucking good at what we do. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm very confident in our skills and abilities, and the work we've done, but that doesn't mean we're special. There are lots of people out there that do what we do. What sets us apart is our brands, right? And who we are. And I think that it's something that's sold so much of our business for us, is like people being able to connect with us, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that is what makes you special. Like that's what makes you special, like who you are and like how you come alive, not like what you do, right? And I think that that is like so important when you start thinking through personal branding, like what sets you apart and what does actually make you special.
This is why no one guesses I'm an only child.
I know. Yeah, I know. Jen is like my not only child, only child. So let's start with like who you said everyone needs a personal brand. I agree.
Oh, actually, I wanna modify my answer.
Okay.
Everyone over the age of 30 needs a personal brand.
Okay. I like that.
And I say that because we were talking about this episode earlier, and your life, I feel like, is so linear in your at least your early 20s
Mhm.
for most people. I mean,
Yeah.
let's speak generally.
Yeah.
For most people, your life is pretty linear. Like maybe you go to college and you get a
Mhm.
job out of college and you're single. Like everything is just very linear and about yourself.
Yeah.
And once you turn 30, 30 seems like a pretty standard marker.
Yeah, again, we're speaking in huge generalizations here
Yeah,
because I think even for myself, like, it wouldn't be 30, but yes, that
right.
I would still connect to this very yes, like,
Yeah. So once you turn 30, life has gotten more complicated in some way.
yes.
So maybe you have a partner,
Mhm.
maybe your career has taken a turn or you've skyrocketed. Some people just really skyrocket in their 20s.
Yeah.
Um, Around that age, a lot of people pivot
Yep.
and they either go to startup life or they start something themselves. Some people become parents.
They change, like, their paths, like, they go from, I don't know, like, marketing, like, brand side to client
There,
side, like, different
it
yeah,
just seems like there's at least 2 to 3 more layers to someone when
totally.
you approach 30. And that's when having a personal brand becomes so important because you create the narrative about yourself.
Mhm.
And I know we'll get into this as we're talking, but it helps explain who you are.
Totally. And I think with that, 30 again being this general age, but, like, by that time and this is something that, like, we pinpointed is, like, whether or not you realize it, you have a personal brand
Right.
already. And I think that that's the thing, like, a lot of people think, like, "Well, I don't wanna be an influencer, or I don't wanna be this or that." Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you have a personal brand. It's, like, whether you've decided what it is or not, you know? Like, and
Mhm.
that's, literally the why we called this episode, like, "What do people say when you're not in the room?" And if you think about that and when we were also originally talking about that, like, and that came up, we were kind of like, "Oh god," like, think about also, like, what some of your friends and I'm no shade to any of your friends, but, like, what do your friends say? And, like, do they
Like, how
have
do they describe
how
you?
do they describe you? And, like, other than, like, "Oh, she's really nice, she's really this," and are they saying things especially when it comes to, like, opportunities, and opportunities are everywhere, right? Like, it
Mhm.
could be a friend of a friend of something like, what are people saying about you? Because most people don't have the knowledge, the language, the skills to craft you into a personal brand on the fly, that aligns with, like, what you want to be
I
presented
mean,
as,
how many
right?
people have you heard say about their partner, "I have no idea what they do all day."
Totally, totally, or,
They do
like
something in sales, they do something in finance,
totally, and, like
they're this kind of a doctor, but I don't know what that means.
yeah, and also, like, like, these very vague words, like, "Oh, they're funny, they're nice." I always you're gonna laugh at this. I always say, like, my worst nightmare is walking out of a room and someone being like, "Oh, what'd you think of Jessie?" And someone being like, "Oh, I guess she's nice." God, if I walk out of a room and I leave that little of an impact on you,
Yes.
gross. Like, to me, like, again, that's my worst nightmare, like, that feels very dramatic, but truly, I've said that for years, and
It's strange because there's no drama to you.
but true, like, I want you to like me, I want you to dislike me, I want you to have some sort of reaction to who I am, other than just, like, shrug, she's nice,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, like, I hate when I meet someone and I'm just like,
You
this
know what we
one
called this? In college, we had a phrase for this through recruitment
mhm,
because you had to use 3 adjectives to describe someone,
okay.
and one of the adjectives was NGB, nice girl butt.
Yes, like,
That's your worst nightmare.
that's
You
my
don't wanna be an
I
NGB.
don't wanna be an NGB, like, oh my god, like, just like,
And
"She's
and so what it
nice."
meant was she's super nice girl, but I don't know what else to use to describe her.
Yes. Yeah, oh my god, I'm literally gonna use that forever. I love
NGB.
that so much. NGB, like, nice girl, but, like, that's it.
Yeah.
And, like, you don't ever want to oh my god, you think of, like, a job situation, a corporate situation, someone trying to, like, someone says, "Oh, I'm looking for someone to do this," and your friend is sitting and is like, "Oh my god, my friend would be so good at that," and they're like, "She's really nice." And it's like,
Mhm.
"Cool, great pitch, great pitch."
Yeah.
Thanks. But, again, like, I think that bringing it back to, like, what I was saying is, like, our brands have sold us so
Yeah.
much, like, and it's did I don't even know if I said this already, but, like, it's 2022. People should know you before they meet you. I think that that's what I was leading up to. That is like what we've kind of anchored in. And like, because we have this like curated and authentic, like I'm not saying it in like it's super fake, like we, curated online presence, people are able to know us before they meet us. And it
Mhm.
gives us a leg up every single time we go into a new business meeting. And it's allowed
Well, I
us, I
feel like it
think,
also weeds people out in a sense where people
yeah,
only the people who like us reach out.
totally.
I'm sure there are plenty of people who see us that are like,
Ugh.
"Eh."
Again, at least they have an opinion,
Right.
you know? Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's totally fine. Not everyone's gonna like you.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, and and because of that, it like allows us to connect with people who align with us immediately. But like also, it's like the screening phone call. When you're going
Oh, yeah, the
through,
phone screen?
yeah, like a phone screen when you go through, not,
Yeah.
gonna call it recruitment again, like we're in sorority times, with a
Initial
recruiter,
phone
right?
screen,
Your
yeah.
initial phone screen when you're looking
Yeah.
for a new job.
Mhm.
Like that's what I think of it as, like a personal brand. Like that's your initial phone screen. Like that's like when someone's able to like share who you are like very quickly. Again, it's, have you ever been with a friend and you're like, oh, telling them about a new friend or someone else, and you're like, you should meet so and so. You pull up their Instagram profile.
Right.
And have you ever pulled up someone's Instagram profile? It's like, back in dating life. But when
Yeah,
you,
when you, like, scroll through in my dating life, you'd scroll through, like, 10 Facebook profile pictures and
yes,
be like, "He doesn't, like, really look like this." Like,
yes,
he kinda looks like
yes,
this.
exactly. And that's what like happens to me when you don't have any sort of curated personal brand, because it's not even just about your career. It can be about making connections like with friends, with new people, whatever
Yeah.
it is. If you are still dating even, but like you don't want people to have to scroll 6 times down your Instagram profile or like, no, this isn't a good, like, this isn't a great representation.
Yeah.
This makes her seem X. You know what I mean? Like,
But I
this makes her
think
seem,
what we're getting at with this is how to seamlessly curate your ideal presence
mhm.
versus being worried about, like, what photos you're posting.
Yes. But
Because
once
I
you're,
don't want it to come across as though, like, "Oh, I
oh,
can
yeah.
only post, like, the right
But also,
photos."
like, that might not even be part of your personal brand, right?
Right.
Like that's the whole thing is like once you start to like go through, our
Well, yeah, how
workbook
does your personal brand
that
come
we
to
will
life?
link, right?
Yeah.
Um, Once you start to go through the values and everything else, and you start to like understand like how does it come to life? Like what does that mean for me? What does it, and that's the thing, like for us it isn't like Instagram is part of it, our blogs are part of it. You might
Yeah.
not be an Instagram and blog person. You might just need a web page or something. You know what I mean? Like a landing page. And yeah, I don't know. I think that it is like a lot about how it comes to life. Oh, one of the other things that we talked about a lot was in our generation, very few people do the same thing for their whole careers now, right?
Yeah.
Like I know very few people doing the same thing now that they were doing 5 years ago, and I doubt most of us will be doing the same exact thing in 5 years.
Yes.
And I think because of that, it's like who you are becomes so much more important than what you do. And for so many people, like our parents and, other generations, what they did was kind of their personal brand because they did the same thing for most of their lives. They had these like 50-year long careers or whatever it was. And then they retired. And like that was so much a part of who they were. And that can no longer be your identity. But I also think that it has like naturally become people's identities. And that is where I think we see a lot of friction now with people like, okay, I want to do something else, but like I'm so my brand
I'm
and like
stuck.
my identity is so attached to this and this is what I've been doing and like do I know how to do something else? Can I do something else? And I think that that's really hard to like rip away from, but that's also why it's so important to figure out like who you are beyond that because that becomes an umbrella like for your whole life. And yes, your brand will evolve. It's not like you have to pick like very specific things and stick to it, but like other like big brands evolve, it's the same thing, right? Like you
Yeah, I wish that this is something I would have done for myself before I took my business full time.
yeah, which I think that that's the other interesting part about it is like when we kind of talk through it, we both did it on a less intentional in a less intentional way. We both created these personal brands that now hindsight's 2020 and we can look back and we're like, "Oh yeah, I guess we were kind of doing, we not were kind of, we very much did do this, which allowed us to like continually like build upon it." But now, going back, we're like, if we had done this more intentionally, like mind blowing, like it would have
Mhm.
been a huge game changer. But I want to talk about one of the big things that well, two things that we like we're really thinking to anchor in with this is like transitions. Like a lot of people like thinking about either making a transition or like thinking about making a transition in the middle of making a transition, recently made a transition, like career wise, life wise, whether it's like getting married, motherhood, changing careers completely, going back to school, taking on a new job. And then well, we can start with that because we both were talking about like stories and how like our personal stories and like how it affected our lives and why we felt like it was important. And I know you had like a great story from like Miller Coors and like grounding in a personal brand and like what that meant for you when you were leaving.
Yeah, so my personal brand, what I knew in high school that I wanted to study marketing,
Mhm.
and I have always been a goal-oriented human.
What?
Always focused on the next step. And I went to Indiana University, which had a top 10 B school, and
Yeah.
like I had selected it for that reason, worked hard to get in.
Mhm.
When I graduated, I knew I wanted to get right into brand management. Worked really hard to get a full-time job and do that. So every step I took was extremely intentional,
Mhm.
and my brand was solely focused around becoming a successful brand manager.
Yep.
And as I was at Miller Course for a couple years. I knew I always wanted to run my own business. Like I had really appreciated that my mom did that so she could take me to school and pick me up
Yeah.
and still run a company.
Mhm.
But I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And so I started at the time Girl Meets Party as
Uh-huh.
some like party planning blog that grew into event planning that I wanted to take full time. And I ended up doing that thinking it would be really smart at the same time that we had Emmy. Miller Coors was having a down year and they offered voluntary severance packages.
Uh-huh.
So I think I'm allowed to share all this, I believe. I didn't sign anything. Like thinking. Um I was actually able to get maternity leave with a severance package
Amazing.
by opting in. Or the way that it worked out is
Yeah.
I got both.
Yeah.
Anyways, um, point being is I had a really nice runway
Yeah.
to then build the business and, not kind of worry about where my income was coming from. But what I didn't realize, the whole point of me telling you all that is what I didn't realize is everything about my identity got ripped out from under me at the same time.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I didn't have a career.
Mhm.
Like I had this business that I didn't even know what it stood for.
Yeah.
I had a baby, so suddenly I was a mom and that was like supposed to be my top priority. And
Yeah.
when you have a baby, I feel like people are suddenly like, "Are you staying at home with the baby?"
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just
It's
like,
very projecting. It's like deciding
yeah, like is that supposed to be my identity?
right.
Am I supposed to be like all hands in cuz I don't know, like we're kind of connecting, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I can be here all day.
Yeah.
And it was really challenging. And when I would run, I'm still uncomfortable when I run into Miller Coors people. Even though that was the choice I made, I'm still uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Matt's always like, "Why are you uncomfortable with it? You had a fantastic career there. I got promoted there. I won awards, all the things."
Mhm.
But it's that transition still makes me extremely uncomfortable.
That's so interesting. And I was telling you earlier, I think that that's fascinating too because one of the things I was talking about is like Jen has made me so much more comfortable and allowed me to lean into like my skills and not have imposter syndrome when it comes to like what we're doing. I was telling Jen, like when we first started, Jen was like, and I work for this company, this company. It's like, it's not like I didn't do some, impressive things, but one, I'm like younger than you, right? And two, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, you were a brand manager at big, these like, you had a very traditional marketing career, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, and I did not. I was like much more scrappy, social media, like, building as I go, working at startups here and there, also like transitioning from other parts of, like, I was in sales and then like, went to sales again and then like did marketing and then, you know, built a personal brand and like somehow like used that to get me a job, which then launched, my
I
ability to.
Your trajectory is exactly describing my, like, business owner life. It was very ping-pongy
Yeah, like,
getting
right. You're just
started.
like, okay, okay, okay. Like, very much following opportunities. And,
Yeah.
like, again, hindsight's 2020. And now that, with what we do, I'm able to very much craft a narrative, but like doing it during the day, like going through it did not feel
Yeah,
as
super
seamless as
uncomfortable.
I make it sound when I walk through it,
Yeah.
on new business calls now. But yeah, so I think it's just so interesting that you say like you're uncomfortable because I'm like, again, and this is also the value in having a personal brand is like the way you present it is like I would never know that because it's no.
Well, because when that happened, it suddenly was what was my personal brand.
Right, right.
Because my brand was becoming, working in brand management and
Totally.
building out these teams and all of that. It was like, well, that chapter's closed.
Yeah,
You can talk about it if you want, but like the story's over.
totally. Yeah, and
So, like,
sorry, go
what's
ahead.
your story now?
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that I think is interesting because I was also saying that like also as we've built this company, over the crazy almost like last 3 years,
I
going
can't
on
believe
3
it's been
years.
that long.
I know, but it's
I feel like I just woke up this week.
I think at the beginning I was like, and I'm also like smacking myself in the head now for this, but we've grown a lot over the pandemic. But like at the beginning, I was kind of like, yeah, we're doing this thing. It's the marketing greenhouse, like, rubbing my neck. And now I'm like, and we built this fucking company and it's incredible. And we did it during the pandemic
Yeah.
with kids home. Like
Yeah.
mic drop, and I
Yeah.
think that like, but I think what's
I'm like
interesting.
nursing on
Yeah,
conference calls.
seriously. And I think the thing that I find interesting though is that as we've built our company and as we've grown it, like I also have become more confident. But I think when we made this workbook and when we were like kind of like flushing all this out, I was like, wow, I also think that too much of my personal brand is caught up in how well the company does.
Mhm.
And like it's like I felt more confident and more comfortable personally as our company has grown, as we've made more money, as the numbers have rolled in. I'm like, oh, okay, like, damn, we're really good at this. We're great, which is fantastic. And like, knock on wood, continues to go this way. Marketing Greenhouse continues for a long time. And that's the plan. But at the same time, it is interesting, like, looking through that, like, my value should not be attached to that. Right. And like, and it's
See,
really
I
hard
think it's
as
okay to have some of your value attached
some
to
of
it.
it, but I do think that, like, there is a large portion right now that is defined by our company, and I also don't think that I think that it's more valuable for our company if we have more defined personal brands,
Yeah.
because then it builds it better, and so that's what I'm saying, like, I think it's bleeding too much into it versus allowing it to, like, be it's and again, it's not separate because we will always be intertwined because it is a small business and we do it purposefully, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very purposeful, like I said, it brings us a lot of our business, but it is interesting, like, as I'm going through this worksheet, trying to figure out, like, you know what it reminds me of? Because we've also I've started doing I did it with Kyle, my husband, and it reminds me of because I was like, "Oh, we should do, like, values for our family." That was, like, part of the
Yeah.
sheet, and then I realized values for my family and values for me are 2 separate things,
Mhm.
and I think that that is something that I have you it's hard sometimes, like, that's a good way to think about it, is, like, sometimes your job, like, income it's like job and family, and then you're like, "But, like, where do I fit into this?" And there is a lot of overlap, right? Like, there's a lot of middle in the Venn diagram, and, like, for my family and myself, like, probably 7 of those values were overlapping, but 3 of them were not, and those are important to, like, make sure that you differentiate where you are yourself and like what's important to you,
Yeah.
and like what brings you to life as a person, because it is separate from the other, like, what you do, your family and everything else. And I think that that's an interesting part of the personal branding.
That is an interesting part. I guess I haven't given enough thought to that section of it. I feel like honest to God, I keep saying this, but in the last week, I feel like I've woken up and have suddenly realized that we've been at this for 2.5
Yeah.
years. all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what happened? It's been 2.5 years.
I know.
And I'm so proud of our story.
Yeah.
And I see so much of us and other people
Yes.
that I just want to share that, because I think we can help the Jen and Jessies of 2018
Yeah, totally.
kind of skip some of that discomfort
Yeah.
and feel more confident in their story.
I agree. And I think that that's like, we do talk to people, and sometimes, like the nervousness I feel in their voice, or like when they're like, well, I'm just not sure if I could charge that, or like I did. And I'm like,
Well, it's
are
like,
you crazy? Are
it's
you
like, I
crazy?
will-
Do you hear yourself? Do you hear what you've done?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and like, I won't name names, of course, but we have a client that we're working with right now, and she works part-time and serves her clients on the other days of the week. And she was like, I feel like I can't charge X amount because I'm working part-time. And I was like, well, first of all, you can, but second of all, do they know what hours you're working?
right.
And I said to her, which is totally true, I said, I spend Fridays with my kids. Do you want to pay me any less now? And she
Right.
was like, no, I wouldn't even give it another thought.
Right. And it was but it was also like, same client, like she was telling us our story, and I was like, wait, what? Like, you had this incredible career.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even if you didn't have it, like, that's not the only place your value, that holds your value, but like, your list of accomplishments was incredible too.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? What? No. Like, we've got to kill this imposter syndrome. And I think with her, I was like, we need to curate this brand. We need to like have a narrative for you, because I think that, and again, like motherhood, I think just adds a layer, all the motherhood, other things, like as you add layers to your life,
Yeah.
it becomes confusing, and you're just like, well, who am I? And like,
Right.
where do I lean into? And like, how do I make all of these things intertwine? And you're not sure, which one's which. And it seems like people who have well curated personal brands, like they're just effortlessly falling into like, oh, that's so nice. And it's like, usually there's work behind it. Right. So I think that it just allows you to be more confident and like share your story in a way that makes sense,
Yeah.
and like, much like the brand foundations that we do for our clients, it's also something that then you can use to, like, if you have to write a cover letter, if you have to write a bio, if you have to write all these other things.
So I think this is why I love the personal brand workbook, because it helps you take a minute to think about what's most important to you and who you want to be.
Totally. And I think like coming out of the pandemic, that's so different. Like, I was such a different person in January 2020 than I am now,
Which is a good thing.
which is a good thing. Thank goodness. But we've gone through so much, and I think that like so many of us like are feeling scrambled, and also like there have been huge life changes. Like, I know so many people who have like moved across the country or had kids. Like, we both had one kid
Yeah.
that was not even 2 when it started, and it's like, we've gone through so many different life changes. We both live in different places. We're like, there's so much that's different. And I think that like, you have to take a minute to like, now that we're not treading water, get back on land.
Like, you owe it to yourself.
Yes. And like, take inventory of like where you are now and where you want to go, because we've just been in fight or flight for so long. And like, the ground has just been like pulled from under us so many times. Every time we think like we're on stable ground, and granted, like, I'm not sure there's any stable ground anymore, like altogether in this world. But I do think coming out of this, it is important to like take some time to like get to know yourself again and who you are now.
So I think this program that we're coming out with, I will say, I think is actually very special.
Yes.
And I
It
never
is special.
I never call our stuff special. I'm always like, this is not special.
Jen's always like, who's gonna get this? Like,
Who wants to
this is
listen
why
to
like
this,
we do
Jessie?
so many different like rounds of things, because Jen like wants to make sure that everything is like actually like interesting and this and that.
You make me sound very fun to work with.
You are so fun to work with, and Jen just won't give her email out for anything.
No.
I give my email out like it's candy on Halloween. Like,
no. You have to buy me a steak dinner.
Yeah. Hard to get.
Anyways, I'm really pumped about this program. And so next week I want to tell everyone about it.
Yeah, we'll walk through it.
But this week, download the workbook.
We'll talk a little bit more about like the intricacies of like, this was a lot about like why you need it, who does need it. And like next week we'll dive in a bit more to like the intricacies of personal branding, how it works, how it should come to life. And
I love when you get so excited that you stumble on your
I
words.
know. I really am very excited about this. I
It's
think
one of the most endearing things about you. You do it on client calls too.
it's like my brain's going too
Yeah,
fast.
your brain. I could
and I
tell your
can't
brain
get
just gets
out.
like so excited. It's just like can't get all the words
I
out.
can't. Yeah. So anyway,
So come back next week.
come back next week. We will be here, and also listen to last week's. Last week's episode was also super fun about, if you haven't already, about I was going to say forecasting. Oh, super fun. No, about visualizing.
Yes.
Okay. Until next time, guys. Have a good weekend. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.